Hey, you over there. Yeah, I see you. You're thinking about starting your own podcast, aren't you? Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain because I have some experience here. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Yeah, that's right. You heard me. Totally free to record, edit, and distribute your podcast. It doesn't get any better than that. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I am woman, hear me roar, unless you're Latino, Black, or poor. In this episode of Ayana Explains It All, I'll deep dive into the recent infant formula shortage crisis, the awfully convenient hysteria, and what Americans continue to ignore about food shortage in the United States. I've got some explaining to do. Let's get into it. Last week we talked about the recent assault on reproductive rights in the United States and what it means for the right to privacy. So, like I predicted, the Senate failed to advance legislation that would codify Roe in a vote of 49 to 51, with old walking colonoscopy Joe Manchin siding with Republicans because he doesn't like abortion rights. He doesn't like abortion. So that didn't advance. And of course, Clarence Thomas is upset again. He says that the leak of the draft opinion has eroded the public's trust in the Supreme Court. Yeah, I don't know that we really had that much after you guys seated Brett Kavanaugh. So we'll stick a pin in that and see where that goes. Probably nowhere fun. And we'll move on to the new crisis that has gripped suburban white women, and that is the infant formula shortage. A new crisis, a new hysteria, a new reason to be mad, and rightly so. But this isn't a problem that is new. No, in fact, food scarcity is a problem that is old, very old in the United States. People have often quoted Marie Antoinette, the long deceased French monarch, as saying, "Let them eat cake," in regards to showing callousness towards her subjects and telling them while starving to eat cake because they had a lot of flour, or bread, most likely. According to historians, it probably would have been bread and not cake. But people attribute that quote to her. She never actually said it. But we attribute callousness to the monarch, so it makes sense that we would attribute something like that to her because she was not the nicest person. It makes sense that we would think she would say, "I don't care how you fill your bellies. We are not the same. I'm having filet mignon and wiping my mouth on a dead rabbit, and you'll eat yeast pies and wear potato sacks." But Americans, in fact, are good at also telling poor people and economically disadvantaged people to, shove it, deal with it. It's your problem. Starve, stop begging, get a job, be humble. I am not one of those Americans, thank God. I have been poor and without resources. I've relied on food assistance and charity, and let me tell you, it's very sobering. It is humbling indeed, yes. You're humbled by the experience. It's not because you are told to be, it's because you literally are surviving from one piece of food to the next, $1 to the next. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. You don't know where you're going to live. There were times where I had no idea where I was going to live. There were times where I didn't know if I was going to be able to afford infant baby formula, baby formula for my kids. There was a time when I had to count every penny because there were so few pennies. And I'm not saying this to garner sympathy, certainly not, because I did have a lot of help from my family and from community resources. But the point is that when you've been in it, you understand more very well what it is to be economically disadvantaged, to be poor, to be low income. And so one would think that that would teach you empathy for these people, but there are people who have been in it, who have been poor, who get out of poverty, and they forget. They forget the ugliness of it. They forget the scrambling to find food and transportation and completing your high school education successfully, completing elementary school successfully, just the basics, learning to read and write and getting to school without facing violence and getting home from school without facing violence and having something to do after school. And will there be sports programs for kids? Will there be an art program? Will there be reliable transportation for you to get to and from work? In the 5-mile radius from my home, where I live now, there are 3 large full-service grocery stores. In addition, there are convenience stores, lots of convenience stores, and several drugstores like CVS, Walgreens. There's even a Rite Aid. There are pizza places, sushi restaurants, Chinese food places, Italian food, Mexican food. If you don't want to cook breakfast or lunch or dinner, there are dozens of fast food places. Of course, COVID led to the shutdown of a few places, but there are some tried and true, McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and Taco Bell and Rallies. They're all around here. Where I live at, there really is no danger of people not having access to food, but at the same time, there is, because this isn't a small. I live next to Cleveland, Ohio. That's not a small city. So even though there are 3 large full-service grocery stores within, a few miles, like a few driving miles from where I live, I could even walk to a grocery store from where I live. It doesn't mean that it's the same for everyone. Not everyone has access to transportation. Not everybody can afford these food prices, number one. The 2 of the grocery stores that I usually go to, the prices are just ridiculous. They're ridiculous. I've even had to change where and how I shop because of it, because of the increase in food prices. I mean, I'm pinching my budget here. They have really tapped me out the last few shopping trips. But I make this point because the city that I live in, the suburb of Cleveland, is not in any danger of becoming a food desert. It's not in any danger of becoming a place where people don't have access to fresh produce and nutritional options. And recently, and I'll just put it out there, recently white women have been on the warpath because there is a shortage of food for their babies. There's a shortage of food for all babies, in fact, babies who receive infant formula in the United States. But it occurred to me that this is not the first time babies were in danger of having a low food supply. It's just the first time that people are really focusing on it. People are zeroed in on it. It's become a hysterical happening. It's become one of those things that people are just freaking out about, like the toilet paper craze, the paper towel craze, the food hoarding craze of the food hoarding hysteria craze of the COVID pandemic. It's become that. And when I thought about this topic, I was like, wow, this is gonna this is gonna piss some people off. But it's fine. You should be pissed off because this is not a good situation that we're in. I understand that infant formula is important. Yes, especially if that's what you're feeding your baby. I had 2 babies, I know. But the problem of food scarcity is not going to go away once the problem of the infant formula shortage is solved. But your attention to the problem will go away. Your attention to the problem has not been there, and that is why it is a problem, you see. But it's not until white women and their babies are in danger of not having necessary foodstuffs that people act, people spring into action. And that pisses me off. And so that's why I'm here talking about this. When it's white suburban women who can't feed their babies, it is a matter for Congress to address, right? Congress has to do something. Why isn't the legislature doing something? Why isn't the president doing something? Our babies are starving. But when it is underprivileged racial minorities who cannot feed their children or provide proper nutrition for them, it's really kind of a regional issue that is poorly addressed. I mean, it's studied, which is fantastic. But the studies are not resulting in action that is going to be immediate enough to help people who have to go more than 2 miles to get fresh produce. And we know what produce is. Produce is fruits, vegetables, produce is meats, cheeses. It's anything that doesn't come in a package that, says Kraft on it. Except Kraft does make some delicious cheeses. Hey, shout out to them. But of course, somehow this infant formula shortage is President Biden's fault because whenever anything goes wrong, we blame the president. And some of these dudes, rightly so, some of them really mismanaged the office of the presidency and left us in a hole. George W. Bush comes to mind, but also Donald Trump, who was just one of the worst presidents in the history of this country, really did us no favors. He didn't pull us ahead. He didn't take us back. I mean, he just did not do anything. We didn't advance at all. But when this shortage happened, it became Joe Biden's fault, even though he didn't even know about it. And why would he? He doesn't regulate food in the United States. The FDA regulates food. Well, yeah, regulates the manufacturing of food, the importing of food. The FDA regulates how food is processed. The FDA regulates what food is going to be on the shelves and who's going to make it. They license people to make certain foods. But somehow this shortage is Biden's fault. You do the mental gymnastics on that one. I cannot. I have the twisties. Sorry. That was terrible. Okay. So the FDA is responsible for making sure food is safe and meets certain health guidelines and standards in manufacturing, storing, and handling food. It is not their responsibility to keep food on the grocery store shelves or to keep grocery stores in your neighborhood. With one exception, of course, is the infant baby formula. Why do I keep saying infant baby formula? Is it baby formula or infant formula? It's infant formula, right? Whatever. Baby stuff. In any event, the FDA regulates the manufacturing of infant formula the way it does prescription medication. It's heavily regulated. In fact, because they don't want babies to die from ingesting food that's probably not safe, babies can only either have breast milk or they can have the breast milk substitute, which is the baby formula, the powder. Or, sometimes they'll have liquid powder and little things and you could squeeze it into the baby's mouth, whatever. Anyway, so it's heavily regulated because it is so vital to the survival of the babies that they're not going to let just anybody make it. And if they do, whoever they let make it, they have to meet certain standards. But this is the same for whatever food you see on the shelves: meats, cheeses, cereal, vegetables, salad mixes that you don't eat, that you bring home and you don't eat, protein bars. But if it's sold, it still has to be safe. The product has to be safe. The manufacturing and the ingredients, they have to be safe. So as you can imagine, the FDA is pretty bogged down, weighted down. And for as much as so many people hate big government, when something like this happens, when there's a shortage of infant formula, we want the government to act. We want the government to step in and find some way to get somebody to make the government is not in charge of producing the formula. Okay? There are pharmaceutical companies, food companies that do that. That's their job. The government is in charge of regulating how it is made, what goes into it, what ingredients can go into it. Only certain ingredients can go into infant formula. But it's not the government's job to put the cans on the conveyor belt and push it into the boxes and have it delivered to the stores. No, the manufacturers have to make sure that the product is safe, that it meets certain guidelines, that it, again, meets the regulations set by the federal government. They have to make sure of all of that before that infant formula gets to the store shelves. So, here it is again, Americans not holding accountable the correct body for this problem. It is the manufacturer. In this case, it is the manufacturer who is to blame squarely for what is happening. But somehow it's Joe Biden's fault. And for some reason, Congress is now going to act. And for some reason, the FDA is getting pushed back. But Abbott Nutrition of Abbott Pharmaceuticals, the famous Abbott Pharmaceuticals, this is their fault. This is their fault. And so, of course, stocks plunge. The infant formula stocks plunged because of the lack of confidence in them. Well, I mean, what if this entire time, all these years, like 10 years, 20 years, it's been a problem, but because no one died within that time frame from ingesting the formula, nobody really noticed. And that's what happened here. 4 babies got sick. 2 babies of the 4 died. But somehow this is Joe Biden's fault, right? But anyway, so there was another component to this. I'll return to that discussion later. But there was another component to this that really made me so disgusted in this entire discussion, because again, it's Abbott Nutrition that had been alerted that bacteria invaded its infant formula process and made its way into these infants. 2 of them sadly died. So Abbott did a voluntary recall of their formula, and after inspections, by the way, it wasn't just that the FDA decided to inspect Abbott Nutrition, which is located in Sturgis, Michigan. No, it was a whistleblower who submitted I think it was like a 32, 34-page report to the FDA about conditions at the Sturgis, Michigan factory of Abbott Nutrition. and that was in October of 2021. And then in December 2021, the FDA responded and scheduled inspections for January. And so they did the inspections in January, and what they found was that there were unsanitary and unhealthy conditions at the Sturgis facility. There were water leaks, standing water on the floor, which we know breeds and holds bacteria. There were workers not wearing protective gear, and a number of swabs in the facility tested positive for the bacteria found in the infants who got sick and the ones who passed away. Right? So Abbott did a recall of all of their formula. The FDA shut them down because if one baby dies, it's too much. 2 babies, 2 dead infants, that's more than, and then the presence of this bacteria in the factory that was found in these infants, okay, we're shutting you down. That's it. They didn't want more babies to die. And you can't blame them, okay? Blame Abbott. Blame Abbott Nutrition. They're located in Sturgis, Michigan. A lot of people, they interviewed some people in the area who worked there and on the news, and they were saying, oh, wow, we had no idea. I mean, it just seems so safe. People go in with their protective gear, and then if they touch something and it's not sterile, they have to, clean it. And it just seemed like such a nice place. It's housing bacteria that apparently can kill you. So they're closed. They're closed, and according to Abbott, they have been working hard to clean up their act. They've been implementing all of these changes that the FDA recommended, but the FDA is still trepidatious, and rightfully so. I mean, this is these babies' lives we're talking about. And people are upset, but people aren't upset for the right reason. You think it's because, as some people have said, and then this just totally disgusted me. Oh, well, it's because we're giving all of our formula to illegals. Now, the federal government detains migrants at the border. We know this. There are detention facilities. We've seen them during the Trump administration and even during the Obama administration. This was a big story, okay? Babies being torn from their parents, parents not seeing their children being adopted away, et cetera, et cetera. We do hold babies. We detain children. We detain adults. And we'll detain their babies too. I mean, detain a baby, it sounds terrible, but that is what happens. But in 1997, in a lawsuit, which is termed everywhere the Flores Settlement, it laid out the appropriate treatment for detained immigrant children in U.S. custody. The government, the federal government, agreed to holding them in safe and sanitary facilities, provide drinking water and food as appropriate, including baby formula. Yes, the government has to provide baby formula for babies. Imagine that. Imagine the government having to feed people in its custody. Wow, why would they ever want to do that? Right? People make me so sick. To think, people have actually been suggesting that the federal government not give infant formula to children in U.S. custody. I don't know how they're going to get fed. I don't know if these same people are volunteering to go and nurse these babies. I don't think they are. But here's how the federal government does it. The federal government, through Customs and Border Patrol, purchases a certain amount of infant formula every year. It's not even a large quantity because the government is not holding these babies indefinitely. they're either reunited with their parents, or, as we've seen in some cases, they are put into the foster care system. They are put into foster homes. The states take charge of them. So they're either reunited with their families and everybody is sent back to where they migrated from, or the children, if they can't find family members to take them, are placed in care homes. So the government isn't holding on to these children indefinitely. And in some cases, as we've seen, they lose track of them altogether, which is truly pathetic. But they buy infant formula in advance and they store it. They purchase it by year, and again, they store it. And what they're buying does not put even a dent in the yearly supply that's manufactured by these companies that the FDA has licensed to make infant formula. And I know it's tempting to show disregard for immigrants and poor people. They're like the whipping, the what is it? They're the horse you like to whip, for sure. It's tempting to show disregard for immigrants and poor people, but suggesting that we starve immigrant children shows moral bankruptcy and ignoble attitude for humanity beyond what I've seen since probably the height of the pandemic. And what I saw at the height of the pandemic was just like, I have never seen Americans act like that before. People hoarding food, hoarding toilet paper, hoarding paper towels, people selling these products on auction websites, people upset that somebody would get food before them, people upset that someone would get a vaccine before them or a COVID test before them. We acted so entitled and so ugly that I shouldn't be surprised that we continue to see this behavior because, it's who we are. It is who we are. It's time for us to admit it. We're prejudiced, we're bigoted, we're racist, we're ugly, we're awful, we're violent, we're mean, we're cruel, we're selfish, we're self-centered. Sure, we can be caring and nice and kind and blah, 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 but we're so many things that we should not even want to tell people about that it sickens me. And that's what I'm seeing in this infant formula shortage crisis. It's not only showing the lack of care and concern for poor people, but it's showing a lack of care and concern for people who face food shortages every day. Right? And it's so funny because even the former First Lady, Melania Trump, gets on the news and exclaims displeasure with President Biden for letting babies suffer and starve to death. Like, is she for real? Does she not know who she's married to? She's married to Donald Trump, who during his presidency showed a complete lack of care and concern for children, especially during the pandemic. And he did not push any policy to deal with hunger in American cities whatsoever. In fact, he worked hard to reduce food benefits for lower income Americans. Yeah, he worked to reduce food benefits for lower income Americans. His 2021 budget for the U.S., if it had passed, it didn't, sought cutting the SNAP program by more than $180 billion. That's nearly 30% of the funding over 10 years. He wanted to cut $180 billion from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program over 10 years. The program provides eligible low-income individuals and families with monthly benefits to purchase food at participating retailers. We know this. We know what SNAP is. And in every state, it's called something else. In Ohio, it's called the Direction Card. The card is called something, but the program is called SNAP. In Ohio, it's the Direction Card. In Michigan, it's the Bridge Card. But SNAP is a vital part of the federal government's programs to improve health and economic security in this country. And Donald Trump wanted to cut $180 billion from it because it does not serve wealthy people to be taxed at a rate that would allow poor people to survive. Think about that. Wealthy people do not want their tax money going to poor people. Wealthy people do not want any of their money going to people who are low income, disadvantaged, living in underserved communities. Why? Because they believe very strongly that even though these people are in the position they are in, it is of their own making. And all they have to do is pull themselves up by their bootstraps. All they have to do is try harder. All they have to do is think positive. All they have to do, blah, 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 blah. Wealthy people have contempt for the poor. So they're not going to want to put more money into social services, more money into Medicare and Medicaid, more money into SNAP. No, they're going to want to cut it. In fact, this week, or last week rather, Senator Rick Scott, for some reason he is a senator from Florida, his budget proposal for the GOP aims to raise taxes for people who make less than $100,000 a year and to cut Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. They want to get rid of it. Doesn't make them any money. It helps their constituents. But whatever doesn't make money, whatever helps poor people, whatever social safety nets are available, they despise them. They despise the poor. They despise social safety nets. And they want to trim them as much as humanly possible. And when I say humanly possible, they want to file it down to the point where people will be, just starving just a little bit. Because they'll want to go out and get jobs. Once they see that they don't have money for food, they'll want to go out and get jobs. They'll want to get education. Never mind that they can't afford it. Never mind that they don't have the resources to obtain a job, to even get an interview for a job. They don't have reliable transportation, maybe. They haven't completed high school, maybe. They don't have full bellies, maybe. Never mind all of that. It doesn't benefit the wealthy because it requires their tax money to stay afloat. SNAP doesn't benefit them. But if you don't make sure their little babies got that infant formula, you're as good as gone the next election cycle. Even though it's not your fault. Even though the regulatory body is trying to make sure the infant formula is safe because a private corporation didn't do their job in making sure their facility was clean enough to produce infant formula that wouldn't kill your baby, even though it is their fault. Somehow you've decided to blame the president and the government and make it Congress's responsibility to respond to this and somehow inject money or resources to ramp up productions at other facilities to get infant formula onto the store shelves. That's because that's what you want. You want them to rush and make infant formula. You don't want them to, test it, make sure it's good. You don't want them to test the ingredients. You just want them to make more of it. And you want to give this to your babies. So, There was one thing I also found very interesting was that people were upset that it was taking the FDA so long to investigate what the whistleblower reported. And to them, I say, you have to work in government for maybe 1 week to find out why things don't move as quickly as you would like them to in the private sector. It's impossible. It's impossible. And there are probably thousands of whistleblower reports. The whistleblowing is encouraged in the government. There's not like 5 reports they have to read. There are thousands. And all of these claims have to be investigated and they have to be validated. And yeah, it might take them a couple of weeks to get around to it. You either want big government or you want a small government. You either want a big regulatory body that's going to be in everything, which means it has to take this time necessary to make sure they get it right, or you want a small government that looks the other way and just lets the baby formula roll off the shelves with the bacteria in it, and you'll take your chances because April and Frank need to feed their baby. What else is really interesting about what's happening is that, and I've said this before, what affects white women affects Black and Latino women even worse, because WIC recipients receive about half of the nation's infant formula stock. So whatever is produced, WIC recipients are receiving about half of that. And 69% of WIC recipients are Latino. And 66% of them are Black, Latino and Black mothers. So 69% of WIC is Latino mothers, 66% are Black mothers. So, and Abbott Nutrition is, out of the 4, Abbott Nutrition is one of the only ones licensed to make infant formula that WIC recipients can purchase. So WIC recipients cannot just buy any kind of formula. It's the same with all of the food on the list. They have to buy food listed by the program, certain cereals, certain milk. They can have fruit. They can have certain dairy products, but it's whatever they're told they can buy. They can't just go to the store. They can't go to CVS and get CVS brand formula. Yeah, there are manufacturers who make store brand formula, but WIC recipients cannot just buy that. They have to buy what they're told to buy. So you have Black and Latina mothers who are 69 and 66% of WIC recipients, and they can only buy what Abbott Nutrition makes or the other 2 manufacturers. And so when Abbott is cut down, it's just these 2 manufacturers, and they have to hope that those manufacturers have baby formula that is in stores. That are in stores that are in their fucking neighborhood, by the way. And this brings me to my bigger point. While white women are on TV and in the newspapers crying about how their babies, they only have 3 and 4 weeks of formula left, there are some women who only have a day of formula, and they can't just go to the store and get another brand. Because first they have to find a fucking store to get to. They can't go on the internet and coordinate with neighbors and others and receive infant formula. They can't go on the internet to read what Abbott says about how to find infant formula in their area. They have to call the WIC office during business hours. If we say it first, if Black women say it first, no one believes us. No one believed us when we said we were, experiencing racism in healthcare and that we were nearly dying giving birth. And some of us are dying giving birth. It had to become an epidemic for people to pay attention. Somebody famous had to talk about it. If we say it first, we're not believed. But if white women come behind us and say the exact same thing, they're believed. They get the action. They get people to act. And it's disgusting. And I hate that this happens. I hate that this had to be the way that people found out that Abbott Nutrition was poisoning babies. I hate that this had to be the way that people found out that there are only 4 manufacturers of infant formula. What do you think people are going to do about it? Because there is no alternative. These facilities, these manufacturers have not come up with an alternative way of producing formula because it is so difficult to manufacture, because it can only contain certain ingredients, because again, you're giving it to a baby. Babies can only eat certain things. You can't put a steak in a baby's mouth. You can't feed steak and potatoes to a newborn baby. And it's so strictly regulated. But there are no alternatives. So these facilities, these manufacturers, the infant formula has been, dangling out there, vulnerable to these collapses for decades. While these companies have built this monopoly around the manufacturing of infant formula, and suddenly people care. It's with anything. If it doesn't affect you, you don't care. But when it's your only choice, like when you're a WIC recipient, when it's your only choice, when Abbott Nutrition becomes one of the only choices for infant formula, you're scrambling, you're panicking. And with good reason, because people aren't focused on you. They're focused on, again, April and Frank's baby out in the suburbs of Connecticut on Revolutionary Road. They're not putting you on TV. They're not putting poor women on TV and asking them how they're able to find infant formula. Because they don't give a fuck about your babies. And that's the truth. It is a sad truth. It is a very sad truth, but it is the truth. If you don't believe me, step outside of your house, your apartment, in your neighborhood, and look around. What does it look like? Your children's schools, what do they look like? Do you see grocery stores? No, you don't. Corporations are not investing in your neighborhoods. They don't want to put grocery stores in your neighborhoods. And you know why? One of the biggest problems they see with investing in low-income neighborhoods, underserved neighborhoods, is that they don't believe that people who shop one month will have the money to come back and shop again the next month. It's because you're poor that you do not have grocery stores serving you. Sure, you got SNAP one month, but are you going to have it the next month? You got tax money this month, you can buy a bunch of food. Are you going to have it next month? You got a job this week. Are you going to have one next week? Are you going to be able to come back next week and buy $500 worth of food? They understand that they're going to get consistent shopping in the suburbs. They're going to have people as soon as the doors open until the doors close at night. They're going to have people spending hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars every month. So they're going to stay there. And if they try to leave, let me tell you who will demand that they do not leave, who will make sure these people have everything that they ask for so that they don't go anywhere. White people. And I'm not saying any of this to seem racist, honestly, but this is just the reality of it. The world is different for white people. This country is different for white people than it is for black people. It just fucking is. White people get scared when there isn't, food to feed their babies, and they get the attention. They get the resources brought to them. And apparently they get scared when there aren't enough white people. I won't get into the recent shooting because it's very distressing. But it just underscores how this is a different country for Black people than it is for white people. It just is. We're literally attacked. We're murdered where we shop, where we worship. We're murdered because of the color of our skin. You hate me because of the color of my skin. Imagine that. I can't do anything about it. You can do something about your attitude, because I can't change what I am. But this is a different country for whites than it is for Blacks. And I'm not saying that to put fear and despair in your hearts. I'm not saying this to be doom and gloom, but when a factory closes and people can't get infant formula, it's not the same as when a store closes and you don't have access to food, period. Because that is what is happening to a lot of neighborhoods in big cities across this country, in metropolitan cities across this country. You can't just reopen a store. You can reopen a factory. You can't just reopen a store. The FDA can go in and be like, okay, Abbott, turn the lights on, get back to work. When stores close down, they take everything with them. They take jobs. But most importantly, they take all of their shit with them, all of the food. So if you lived within proximity of a store and it closed, now you either have to go further or you have to, traverse to one of these little convenience stores that it's at a gas station and see if maybe they have bread and cheese and deli meats or whatever. Some of them do, some of them don't. But there's no outrage for this. There is no outrage for it. And it's getting worse. When I tell you it is getting worse, believe me, it is getting worse. But there's no outrage for it. People aren't on TV talking about this. And I know you have to pick your battles. You have to pick your battles, fine. But when people pick their battle and fight their battle and win, they don't move on to a new battle unless it, again, directly affects them. They're not going to take the energy they put into this infant formula shortage and suddenly give that all to the food desert problem in the United States. They're not going to channel that. They're going to forget all about whatever else is going on because their problem was solved. That's how this country works. In fiscal year 2021, in fact, over 41 million people participated in the SNAP program. And places where people are using SNAP benefits are mostly underserved communities. Now, you can go anywhere, live anywhere with your SNAP benefits. You can, be living in the suburbs and use food assistance and cash assistance. But most of the recipients are living in underserved and low-income communities. And during the coronavirus pandemic, they were given extra funds. There were more people requiring food assistance. So states were given more money and people were given more funds because they had to be at home. The children had to be at home, so they needed more food. But I mean, you could have a SNAP card loaded with $5,000 and still have to travel 5 miles by public transportation or Uber to purchase food. having the money and being able to spend the money are two different things. But that is in fact the reality for millions of Americans with food insecurity. That is, they do not have access to food. They may have access to funds for food, but they do not have access to food. And I live in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, where 35% of the total resident population live in food deserts. 35% of the total resident population. And the city seat, which is Cleveland, 59% of the total population live in food deserts. And again, a food desert is a geographic area where residents have few to no convenient options for securing affordable and healthy foods. But this is especially for fruits and vegetables. Food deserts are disproportionately found in high poverty areas. Cleveland is unfortunately a high poverty area. Food deserts create extra everyday hurdles that can make it harder for kids, families, and communities to grow healthy and strong. It literally prevents you from being able to get the nutritious food you need to maintain a healthy diet. And when poor people tell you that the only options they have for food are convenience items like bags of chips and jugs of soda, it's because it's fucking true. Because there are no grocery stores where they can go and get fresh food, fruits and vegetables, and deli meats, and just cuts of meat that they could cook at home and serve to their families. They have to rely on convenience stores for their food options. And so this is where they're spending their SNAP benefits. And keep in mind also that you cannot use SNAP benefits to buy hot food. So it has to be food that's on the store shelves or produce. You can't go and buy a pizza. You can't go to a restaurant and use your SNAP benefits. You have to buy food that you're going to cook at home. Or you have to buy, packs of noodles or whatever. It's not ready-made, fresh and hot stuff you're getting. And sometimes it's only convenience items that you're able to purchase because, again, you live in a food desert. And unfortunately, in the United States of America, food deserts disproportionately affect Black communities. And according to a 2014 study from Johns Hopkins University, the study compared U.S. Census tracts of similar poverty levels and found that in urban areas, Black communities had the fewest supermarkets, white communities had the most, and multiracial communities fell in the middle of the supermarket count spectrum. Now, food deserts exist for several reasons. As I said before, one of them is that corporations don't want to invest where they're not going to get consistent dollars. But store closures without stores replacing them is one of the big reasons. A long-standing chain grocery store in Northeast Ohio, Dave's Supermarket, recently announced a closure in a low-income area of Cleveland, Ohio, the Collinwood area. Now, when you think of underserved, this community is underserved. And Dave's was the only grocery store in the city, in this neighborhood, rather. And it closed. Now residents are left without a grocery store within a 2-mile radius. But graciously, Dave's has offered to institute a grocery store shuttle to one of their stores in a nearby suburb. Are you fucking kidding me? So I'm going to have to find a way to get to the shuttle stop, wait for the shuttle, then have your shuttle take me to the grocery store in a nearby suburb, then bring me back to the shuttle stop, and then I'm going to have to find a way to get home with all of my groceries. Or is the shuttle going to take me home with all of my groceries? Because that would be clutch, right? Oh, you closed the grocery store. Oh, you're going to come directly to my door and take me to the nearby grocery store and then bring me home with all my stuff? Okay. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. In fact, I don't think that's going to happen at all. And try as they did, the city of Cleveland could not get Dave's to agree to stay in the city of Cleveland, in the Collinwood area. I mean, they were throwing money at this place. And they're like, no, absolutely not. And they cited their reasons, low customer turnout, the area that they're in is unsafe, et cetera, et cetera. But what it comes down to is that corporations no longer want to invest in economically depressed areas, even if it means that people get food every day. It's not worth it to them anymore. And they can close, and no one's going to do anything about it, obviously. But God forbid April and Frank not get infant formula, to have 5 to 6 weeks of infant formula stored up, where now they only have 3 to 4 weeks. People are going to do something about that. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't. Babies have to be fed, obviously. I am not saying that babies should not be fed. I am not saying that these children, these babies, should not get their infant formula. I'm saying that it should be delivered safely to them so that they're not dying from ingesting it, and that the government is doing its job and making sure the infant formula is delivered safely to your babies. I'm saying that you should also care that there are people in other areas living with food scarcity, food insecurity every day, and now you are seeing it, and what are you going to do about it? You're living it now. You're living what millions of people go through every day. And when your problem is solved, when that factory reopens, when you get to have 6 months worth of infant formula saved up and you don't have to think about this anymore, where are you going to channel your energy? Because the problem for everyone else isn't going to go away. It shouldn't have to affect you for you to care about it. Food scarcity, food insecurity is an American problem. It affects people in every state of this union. It affects millions of people. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to vote? Are you? Oh, thanks. Not enough people voted. The last primary in the state of Ohio, at least, it was the worst turnout since 1986. We're choosing a governor. We're choosing a new senator. We're choosing a congressional representative. In my county, we're choosing several judges. And it was the worst turnout in a primary since 1986 for the entire state. So clearly you're not going to vote for people who are going to make this problem go away, because you're not voting at all. And you're not voting smart when you vote. That's the other problem. I've already told you what the GOP and Republicans and wealthy people want to do about food benefits. What do you think they want to do about food insecurity in America? Because they own stocks in these corporations. A lot of them work for these corporations. They take their money and they funnel them two legislators who are going to make sure they keep as much money in their pockets as possible. They're going to funnel money to people who make sure that corporations keep as much money as possible, that they're taxed as little as possible, that wealthy people, the owners of Walmart, the owners of Amazon, that they're taxed as little as possible. They're not giving their money to people who are showing concern for the poor. But who are the people getting the votes? The people with the money. Money is buying votes. Yeah, look up Citizens United. Do your Googles and look up Citizens United. Income inequality, transportation challenges, a preference for convenient food, and finally, added risks of investing in lower income neighborhoods are the reasons corporations do not want to put stores in Black communities. They look at purchasing power. They look at security. They look at insurance fees and maintenance of customer base. They want consistent consumer dollars. Do you know if you live in a food desert? There are 4 big cities in the state of Ohio. All of them are food deserts. All of them have neighborhoods where there is a population living without a grocery store within 1 to 2 miles of the neighborhood. I could right now go walk to a grocery store. Full service, got a deli, bakery, florist. Shit is expensive too, let me tell you. There are people who do not have that option. And I don't know if you've ever tried to do this, but carrying 10 bags of groceries on the bus is a pain in the ass. I've carried groceries on the bus. I've used one of those grocery carts, those 2-wheeled grocery carts. Love that thing, by the way. I've used that. I've carried groceries home on my arms. One of the things that I would think about when I didn't have transportation or when I didn't have a lot of money is, how the fuck am I going to go grocery shopping? How am I going to get this shit home? I remember when I was pregnant with my son, and my husband at the time, we only had my car, our car, excuse me. And he took the car because he was an asshole. And I still had to cook dinner and eat. Obviously, I was pregnant. There was a grocery store nearby, and I walked my fat pregnant ass all the way to the store, and I went shopping, and I walked all that shit home. Sciatica and all. Sciatica, 8 months pregnant, walking down the street with groceries. If there's a gas station closer by where you can just get like a bag of chips and some soda, instead of having to find a way to get to a grocery store that's 2 miles from your home. And 2 miles is a long way. That's not a short distance. For some people, that could be an hour walking. It can certainly be an hour on the bus. Pick any big city, like New Orleans, for instance. New Orleans, Louisiana. It's a city loved for its famous food and culture and unique dishes and interests, and the Mardi Gras parade and Bourbon Street. New Orleans, Louisiana is a food desert, and it is a desperate food desert too. that despite the tourist dollars and the famous dishes and the resources of healthy food are scarce for many low-income neighborhoods, which are located a mile or further from the nearest supermarket. And in a lot of big cities, this was a situation worsened by COVID. New Orleans, for instance, has one grocery store for every 14,000 people. New Orleans, like Cleveland, shows long distances to fresh produce. It shows corner stores becoming an easy option for food. And with corner stores overpopulating the cities, providing fast, unhealthy, super cheap food options, people are ingesting a lot of processed foods. And when you ingest a lot of processed foods, what happens? What do you develop? Obesity. You develop obesity. You develop hypertension. You develop high cholesterol. And what is the leading cause of death for Black adult men and women? Heart disease. Obesity leads to heart disease. They go hand in hand most times. You can develop diabetes. Hypertension can lead to strokes. High cholesterol can lead to organ damage, but also heart disease. So food scarcity, food insecurity, food deserts is a problem that can be traced directly to the inadequate diets of Black Americans and to the death of Black Americans. Food insecurity is killing Black Americans. Food insecurity is killing Black Americans. It's not just about infant formula for us. It's bigger for us. It's worse for us. Everything is worse for us. But if we say it first, people don't listen to us. People aren't listening to us. But, you will see grassroots efforts to bring stores to low income and underserved neighborhoods. You'll see the government studying the effects of food deserts and food insecurities and the presence of food deserts. And you'll think, okay, all of these efforts, the government's putting funding into things, this means action. No, actually, it doesn't. Like I said before, it's getting worse. You can offer all kinds of incentives to corporations. If they don't want to put their stores there, they don't have to. So what do? We have to rely on ourselves, really, at this point, to try and solve this problem. But opening a grocery store takes so much money and so much. I mean, you can't just be like, okay, I'm going to open a store. And bam, you have a store. There's building permits. There's purchasing the food. There's business loans you need. There's all kinds of things. And why it's easier for a corporation, like the people who own Dave's Market or the people who own Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or Giant Eagle, it's easier for them to do it. They already have the trust. They already have the name. Walmart, it's easier for them to do it. They already have the money and the trust of the community to just plop something down. Even, family dollar stores, which seem to spring up overnight everywhere, But they sell, again, convenience items. They're not selling fresh produce. They're not selling the healthy food you need to maintain a balanced diet so that you're not dying from preventable illnesses. You need something that's going to fill your belly. Can you get full off a bowl of cereal? Sure, I've tried it. I don't recommend it, however. So the US government initiated the Healthy Food Financing Initiative, which is a public-private partnership administered by the Reinvestment Fund on behalf of the USDA, Rural Development. The USDA, by the way, regulates the SNAP program. So the Reinvestment Fund wants to improve access to healthy food in underserved areas. But again, this is like a small initiative. And they award a small amount of money, a small amount of grant money in resources to eligible, fresh, healthy food retailers and enterprises to overcome the higher costs and initial barriers to entry in underserved areas. So they're trying to encourage enterprises, food retailers, to go into underserved areas. Please, here's the money. We'll eliminate the barriers for you. Just please get in there. And it's great. But it's a grant program. You have to apply. The funds maybe will be there, maybe they won't be there. But the Healthy Food Financing Initiative is available. And what the Reinvestment Fund is responsible for is leveraging private capital, establishing financing and technical assistance programs, and channeling capital to fund eligible projects and partnerships, Currently, the Reinvestment Fund offers a targeted small grant program and technical assistance program through the Healthy Food Financing Initiative. It's a lot of words to say there's a little bit of money available if you want to do this. But you have to go through these channels, and you have to be approved, and then we'll help you. But this is such a small thing. It sounds big because of all the titles, but it is a small thing. Really, this is going to take local community leaders to act. It's going to take health departments to act. Every county, every city, really, especially if it's a big city, has a health department, and they all study health deserts in their communities. They identify them, they target them for improvement. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I'm from East Cleveland, Ohio. East Cleveland is a food desert. East Cleveland is a desert, really. There used to be, listen, before East Cleveland was where I grew up, it was called Millionaire's Row. Fancy, gorgeous, beautiful, whatever you wanted. White people, of course, wealthy white people could get it. Big, beautiful mansions. Lots of greenery, etc., etc. Even when I was growing up there as a little kid, there were businesses lined up and down Euclid Avenue. Small businesses, mom and pop businesses. It was Black-owned businesses, Polish, other Eastern Europeans. It was some Asian, but it was mostly Black and white people who owned businesses. Funeral homes, convenience stores, grocery stores, dry cleaners, tailors, nightclubs, gas stations, clothing stores. We did not have to go far to go to a store. I mean, we would go to the mall. There was like a mall that was up the hill that you could go to by bus. We would still go to the mall, but you really didn't have to leave your city to go to get food, to get clothes, to get, toiletries. You didn't have to leave your city. Now, if you live in East Cleveland now, you're not shopping in East Cleveland because there really is nowhere to shop. It's not a good situation. And if you live in an underserved community, you know what I'm talking about. It's not a safe situation. And I understand that this is what corporations are looking at. If they plant down a grocery store in an area, are their stores going to be safe? Are their employees going to be safe? Are people going to shop there? Or are they going to keep going to the gas stations to get corned beef sandwiches? It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to think about. But I mean, we're combating a lack of access to food, and these small efforts are not going to cut it. We need loud voices like the white women I'm seeing on CNN and, being interviewed by the Washington Post. We need those voices to be raised to help combat the problem of food insecurity. But basically, we need more people paying attention to this issue. We need more people understanding what it is like if you are living in one of these underserved areas and you have to go over an hour to get to a grocery store. You have to drive a long distance to get to a grocery store. So you're not making a quick trip because you can't afford to make quick trips. We need you to use your vote. We need you to use your voice. We need to do something about this. We need to make sure that this is not a problem in 2023, in 2024, in 2025. We're still talking about poor people and low income people and Black communities having inadequate access to food. So what are some things that we can do to help combat this problem? A public health expert at Johns Hopkins University named Joel Gittleson suggested, within this complex landscape of food deserts, some strategies for alleviating food desert conditions include incentivizing grocery stores and supermarkets in underserved areas, making it more attractive for them to want to build a business in the area. Neighborhood improvement projects, beautification projects, for instance, tax incentives, alleviating security concerns, maybe putting a bus stop in front of the store. That helps too. That's a big deal. That right there will guarantee you get customers coming to your store. Another option is funding citywide programs to encourage healthier eating. A lot of cities do this. But again, you can encourage healthier eating all you want. If the food is not there, then it's not going to happen. But also, you have to make healthy eating for a lot of people look attractive. You have to show them where on the dolls their arteries are going to clog for them to see it, for them to understand that this is what is going to happen if you don't start eating healthy, if you don't start getting up and moving. And that's the other thing. If you have a city where people are able to walk for their health, people are going to want to live in that city. And a lot of these underserved communities are not safe places for people to walk. Some of them, you can ride a bike. But if I wanted to go for a walk, I can do that in my city. I can just get up, put my walking shoes on, and just go for a 30-minute walk. But it's not only healthy eating, it's a healthy lifestyle, healthy living. You have to show people that this is important. And it is important. But that's one of the ways to combat the problem. If people demand the healthy eating options, if they go to their city leaders and say that we want this, we don't have any healthy eating options here in this city, we want it, then the cities will work to make sure that it happens. And there has to be enough people saying it. We can get people to rally around a sports team. Can't we get people to rally around having a grocery store in their city with full service fresh produce? Another option is extending support for small corner type stores and neighborhood based farmers market. That is the one thing I will say about East Cleveland, is that for decades it has supported and helped maintain a farmers market. I know on the weekends it's open. I don't know what happens during the week, but when I was growing up and then when I was receiving WIC, I could go to the farmers market and get fresh produce. I mean, that was just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I could use my WIC to do that. It was just wonderful. So there was farmers markets. People would bring their, things that they had grown on their farms and in their little farms. There was even, for a time, there was a vegetable garden across the street from the farmers market. But that's another thing. Encourage people to grow their own food. And I know this is not possible everywhere because people don't have the landscape for it. But there are neighborhoods where people can come together and help maintain a community garden. I've seen it. It is possible. It is very possible. It can happen if enough people want it. Another option is partnering with the community when selecting food desert measurements, policies, and interventions. And expanding pilot efforts allowing customers to use SNAP benefits to purchase groceries online. Wouldn't that be something? If you could use your SNAP benefits, and I do believe that Amazon does allow this, you can use your SNAP benefits to purchase food through Amazon and have it delivered to your home. So in that case, worrying less about the presence of a grocery store because the food is going to be delivered to you. I don't know if this is available in every state, obviously, but that is certainly an option. But again, if we're moving everything to online, what is in the community? What is in the community? Are these jobs in the community? No, these online order filler jobs and delivery person jobs, those aren't in the community where the people are ordering from. It's not just that the stores aren't there, but the jobs aren't there. Environmental, policy, and individual factors shape eating habits and patterns, both personally and collectively. So, yes, it is a complex problem, but there are ways we can address it. Some are going to be easier than others, but again, if we do not do the work, then nothing is going to happen. There won't be a return of stores to East Cleveland. There won't be a return of a major grocery store to the Collinwood area if we don't do the work. We don't get the attention to this problem. It's not just about providing SNAP benefits. Here's thousands of dollars and millions of dollars more for food benefits. Get the food to the people. And before I go, let me send a big "you should have kept that in the drafts" folder to a famed, endeared loved performer Bette Midler, who in a tweet told women to try breastfeeding. It's free and available on demand in response to the infant formula shortage crisis. She, in a tone-deaf and ignorant way, just suggested that we just, pull out our boobs and feed these babies instead of relying on infant formula or asking the government to help us get infant formula to the store shelves. And it's something that a lot of people have been saying, well, why don't you just breastfeed? Just breastfeed the baby. You're mammals. Breast is best. Breast is best. And yeah, it is. It's better than whatever Abbott Nutrition can pump out of its factories. Absolutely. But you know what? Not every woman wants to breastfeed. And because it is our body, it is our choice whether we want to nurse a baby. Just like it's our choice if we want to get pregnant, stay pregnant, deliver a baby. It is our choice if we want to nurse a baby. Some women can't because of medical conditions. Some women don't want to. Again, it is your choice. I had 2 babies. One breastfed very well for 18 months. Another one, after she received that, that initial whatever, the liquid gold they call it. After that, she did not want to nurse again at all. And I did everything I could, everything they showed me suggested to get her to nurse, and she adamantly refused. It was incredible. I had never seen something like that before. I said, she just does not like the taste, maybe, of the nipple in her mouth. And some babies have nipple aversion. Absolutely. And they'll even have nipple aversion with baby bottles. When a baby comes out, you just don't know what the fuck this thing is gonna do. You don't know what it's gonna be. You'll have a plan, and then something will happen, and you'll have to readjust your sails. But I breastfed my son for 18 months, and my daughter could not be bothered, and I wasn't going to let her starve, so I gave her infant formula, and I didn't feel any way about it because my baby was eating, and I was relieved. That was it. But there is a lot of pressure put on women to nurse their babies because it is a good source of nutrients. But this is also only if you are eating a healthy, balanced diet. If you're telling poor women who don't eat healthy to nurse their child, it's not going to help. Because whatever the mother eats, the baby gets through the milk. So if they're not eating and getting the vitamins and the nutrients from fresh vegetables and protein and etc., then it doesn't matter if they nurse or they give the child infant formula. It probably would be better if they gave the child infant formula. If the mother doesn't have a reliable source of food, it's better if the baby gets the formula. So everyone has a reason if they want to nurse or don't nurse. It's not, as Bette Midler says, free and available on demand. Some women can't produce milk. They can't produce enough milk to give to their baby. And again, not everyone wants to, and it's not, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, it's easy, but then it's hard because if you're out in public and your baby is hungry, that baby's going to cry until it's fed. And if you've seen the stories of women who breastfeed in public and they get so much flack and shit from people for taking their breast out to feed their baby. And yeah, you could put a covering over the baby's face, but when that baby gets older, they're pulling the coverings off because it's hot under there. Right? They're sweating. They don't want to sweat while they're eating. Do you want to sweat while you're eating? And maybe you don't have a covering. What are you supposed to do? I mean, I've had to leave stores and go into my car to nurse my baby. I've had to go into bathrooms to nurse my baby. I had to time everything to fall in line with his eating schedule to make sure that, I had at least 2 hours to do grocery shopping because he had just eaten and I wouldn't need to feed him again. I mean, it's easy when your child is on a bottle. Like when my daughter was on a bottle, I could just put a bottle in her mouth and go on about my business and walk around the store and we'd be fine. But if you're nursing, you know, again, it's not free and on demand. There are only certain places that will allow you to nurse your child in public. Some places, very few though, have restrooms that are like family restrooms where you can go and sit and nurse your baby. And, you know, it's expensive. You have to have breast pumps. Breast pumps are not cheap. There are conditions that can be caused by nursing, like clogged milk ducts, which are painful. And when your breast swells with milk and you don't have anywhere to express the milk because maybe you're at work, maybe you're in a meeting, maybe you're on an airplane, it becomes painful and you have to go into the bathroom and squeeze the milk out yourself. You got to buy nipple cream. You got to buy nursing pads because you don't want to leak in public. You got to buy special bras. You got to buy special shirts that are, nursing friendly. And you have to put your entire life on this schedule of when your child can eat. So, yeah, the more convenient option is a bottle because then you can leave your baby with a babysitter and have a break. When you're nursing, you don't get a break. That baby is with you all the time. But again, it's up to you what you want to do. Telling women that they should nurse instead of giving their babies infant formula because it's somehow less adequate for the baby is ridiculous. But that is why it's so highly regulated and only 4 manufacturers can do it because only certain ingredients can go into this formula. There's a way of making this formula that is so difficult because a baby can only have certain things in it in their nutrition, in their food. You can't give a baby, like I said before, you can't give a baby a steak. So yeah, it's important. All of this is important. Nursing is important, but having a baby that's fed is also important. And however you need to do that, that's how you're going to do it. And if one of the sources is gone, obviously, if you can nurse, nurse. If you can't, then, I mean, you're going to have to find some way to get food into the baby. In olden days, when there were wet nurses, you would just have a wet nurse do it. There was an infant formula in the olden days. I mean, people would make up their own concoctions, obviously, but they also didn't use to pasteurize milk, so there's that. But telling women to just nurse your baby. What's wrong with you? You should be nursing your baby, giving it infant formula. Completely ignores that there are women who cannot do it. Completely ignores that there are babies that can't nurse. And we're not talking about a few people, few babies, millions of babies. And not all babies are the same. Even babies who receive infant formula, some of them can only have a certain type of formula. That was my daughter. She could only have a certain type of formula. So the attitudes about feeding babies and nursing, it's just all so tone deaf. And every time something happens, people show their ass And really what you need to do is just, if you do not understand something, read about it, research it, form an opinion. Please do not go spouting off without having all the facts. You can be mad, but mad and stupid is something else. Don't be mad and stupid. Be mad because you have all the facts and you've come to an understanding. Then be mad. Be mad at Abbott Nutrition for poisoning your babies. Or, I'm sorry, in their case, they said they're completely innocent. They had no idea, even though the FDA found the bacteria in their Sturgis, Michigan factory. They still are claiming complete innocence. Don't get mad at Joe Biden. This isn't his fault. I know it's tempting to blame him for everything because, people are just fucking miserable and that's what they're going to do. But this is not his fault. Put the blame where the blame belongs. And when you're thinking about this problem of food scarcity, think about people who are dealing with food scarcity every day and then lend your voice to them as well because they are going to need it. They need it. They needed it yesterday. They needed it last year. They need it now. This isn't something you have to experience to understand it, to care about these issues. You only need empathy. And this has been Ayana Explains It All, brought to you by facts, figures, and enlightenment. Take care. The following works were used in the making of this episode of Ayana Explains It All. The article, Baby Formula Factory Says It's Still Months Away from Production, by Laura Reiley and Sam Easter of the Washington Post, published on May 14th, 2022. The article, President's 2021 budget would cut food assistance for millions and radically restructure SNAP, by Dottie Rosenbaum and Zoe Newberger, published on February 18th, 2022. At the cbpp.org, that is the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities, and the article Changes in SNAP Benefit Levels and Food Spending and Diet Quality, Simulations from the National Household Food Acquisitions and Purchase Survey, published on May 12th, 2022, by Michelle Verploeg and Chen Zinn, also at www.cbpp.org. That is the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. The article Creating Healthy Communities, a discussion of the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission, at www.countyplanning.us. The article East Side Cleveland to be a Food Desert, Regional Supermarket Chain Plans Closure, by Alexander Stott, published on April 22nd, 2022, at liberationnews.org. Food Deserts in the United States, posted on February 13th, 2021, by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. 10 corner stores, 1 supermarket, New Orleans Food Desert Encourages Poor Nutrition, published at www.smartcitiesdive.com. America's Healthy Food Financing Initiative at investingfood.com. What's a Food Desert? The article published by The Health Gap at www.closingthehealthgap.org. And finally, Race, Ethnicity, WIC Participation, and Infant Health Disparities in the United States, by Alexander Testa, Ph.D., and Dylan B. Jackson, Ph.D., at the Annals of Epidemiology, Volume 58, June 2021, pages 22 through 28, at www.sciencedirect.com. Thank you.